Let me take a few minutes to talk about the error log setup on the LV5770. We go back over to the status display where we're right now, and we press the status button over on the right hand side, located in the mode section. And when we do, the menu for the status display comes up, and F6 happens to be the error setup. So we press F6, and that brings us to the first of 5 screens that shows you exactly what items that you can look at or have the 5770 monitor in terms of the SDI signal coming in. Some of these I had mentioned before when I talked about the status display. Now I'm going to go over all these separate items that you can enable or disable within that status display. So first off, on the first page we have the error counters. You can see TRS, line number, CRC errors, EDH errors, and illegal code. The second page we get into the ancillary data, errors that occur or can occur in terms of parity errors and checksum errors. Issues with embedded audio, which could pertain to BCH errors, DNB errors, you see, or I should say DBN errors, parity errors, inhibit line errors, and sample count errors. And again, as I'd mentioned in an earlier chapter, sometimes these errors are simply produced by information not being in the right place in the digital signal, or sometimes the digital values not being correct. Let's go on now to page 3 of the setup. And we get to page 3, we have a section that's on gamut errors, in effect, both digital and analog. And what this particular screen allows you to do is not only just turn on the monitoring of gamut errors for analog and digital, but actually to set some parameters in regards to that. So, gamut errors can occur if only just a few pixels happen to be out of gamut on the video signal. And so the 5770 allows you to come in and actually change the threshold in regards to the upper and lower end that will actually produce or generate gamut errors. If you've got a customer or a client that has a certain specification, this is where you could dial in, let's say 100% or 104% instead of the normal SMPTE standard, which would be 109 and -7. But the unit goes beyond that also. You can have gamut errors that could occur in just a few pixels that happen to be in the image. So what we've done is we've added additional parameters in regards to the area so that you only know about errors that occur that happen to be over 1% of the picture area. So up to, as you can see, up to 5%. You only want to know about errors that occupy a larger part of the image. You can also adjust the duration. Maybe you don't want to know about errors that occur in just a few frames. You want to increase that duration so that you only get errors reported that are over X number of frames, maybe 10 or 20 frames. So these are extra parameters that you can set so that you don't have a proliferation of gamut errors, which can occur if you have just a few pixels out of gamut. All right, so on the bottom side is composite gamut error, and that would be the same parameters for setting it for what the signal would look like in the analog domain. All right. On a previous chapter, when we talked about the status display, we talked about freeze errors and black errors. And what that means in effect is that the signal gets stuck somewhere in your system, maybe in a frame buffer somewhere, and you may not be aware of that, where the 5770 can actually detect that there's no change in the raster, in effect, and report to you that, in terms of an error, that the signal has not changed. And so you can come in here and you can set the parameters for the upper part of the picture, the left, right, and the duration, so that you can be notified, again, if the signal happens to be, for example, stuck in a frame buffer. And then the last page, page 5, allows you to go in and set limits, as we mentioned before, in regards to luminance and chrominance. The default industry standards are there, but you can go in and you can make adjustments in regards to millivolts for the upper and lower levels for luminance, and also the upper and lower levels for chrominance. So that gives you a breakdown of all the adjustments that you can make in regards to the error setup, so that whatever you select, enable, disable, will show up in the error status log.